sick.
I understand that. I think Chris is sick this morning too.
Yeah. I'm not going to touch that money.
Okay, all right.
So that you don't pass that around. I've sanitized my hands so I can touch this. So I have a couple of pickles. Well, I have one pickle. You have a pickle.
I have a little small pickle.
A gherkin.
A gherkin.
I have a pickle.
We're so up and told.
No, it's not. It is a pickle that's been, it's just going to stay in the pickle stage. But I want to know your opinion. So when you write a contract and you represent the buyer and you send it over in whatever fashion you send it over to the listing agent, what other forms do you include at that initial offering? David?
Compensation agreement.
Oh, you're a good boy.
Emily?
Property condition, disclosure, or acceptance.
If it's been provided.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back. Suppose you're writing an offer and it hasn't been provided. What do you need to do? And if you don't get it, but you want to continue to write an offer, what do you put in special steps?
Acceptance.
Okay, but that wasn't even where I was going. So David talked about compensation. How many send the compensation over at the time they send over their offer? How many don't? Okay. Well, I never really thought much about that until, of course, there's a problem. So when you go ahead and send your compensation over, you are relying on the MLS as it is shown at the time that you're writing the offer, right? Well, it just so happens that people can change that at any time. And so when you send over, well, yes they can. So you send it over, and you are not to include MLS number, blah, 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 because those are not guaranteed. And if you send it over midway, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks or just before closing, and they have changed it to say that if you weren't there at the showing, you only get 1%. Now you have a battle. And we're going to have to pull and prove at what time did they change that. So we're going to do it. I'm sure it's going to be a battle, and it'll be just lovely. The bottom line is that compensation needs to go over at the time you write the offer so that you have that absolute time record that you actually were operating on the MLS at that time. So please do not, if you got a problem, get it over with in the offer situation. So if they start saying, no, we didn't do that, then get that over before you get to the closing. Yes, Michelle?
Somebody might have already said this, but I also sent over a copy of the MLS that reflects it.
But you don't attach that to your offer. You don't put that in exhibits or anything.
No, I don't do that.
You better not. And you don't write anywhere on the contract all that's included in MLS number, ever. Never, never, never do that. Mainly because it doesn't work. Because what does it say at the bottom of the MLS?
All information needs to be accurate without guarantee.
So that's why if you're going to fight about compensation, let's do it at the time of the offer, get that all settled and not wait. How many were here, and I know the answer to this, for my red line form changes yesterday? Rip-roaring turnout for that one. So I'm assuming the reason nobody showed up to know about the changes, don't shake your head that you didn't know. Ashley, how many times did you post that I was going to go over the red line changes yesterday?
So many I lost count. It's all their fault.
It was in Facebook, wasn't it? Yeah. A village Facebook. Sorry. Anyway, I happen to have a handout of the changes. It wasn't so huge. I don't know if I have enough here. Couple of things you want to know, a couple highlights, or just let you read it? Highlights. Did you all read that Ashley also posted that it is also on the front of transaction day, this exact thing? Did you all read that?
Yes.
That's why you didn't come. You figured it was there, why not?
Can we do an encore of it, Bobby?
At what day would you like them?
Whenever you're.
Before January 1st, because they're all gonna come out January 1st. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pass this around. Everything that's in red has been deleted. Everything in blue has been added. And everything in yellow is nothing. Just like I guess pay attention. But the blue and the red. Couple of highlights around a minute.
Oh, yeah.
We eliminated the lot land seller's property disclosure. Okay. You're happy about that? Well, I'm glad. Why are you so happy?
Because my seller didn't want to do it.
Okay, and he's right because, or she, this is not required by the law. And that's another one of those things that we were requiring that wasn't necessary, and we were exposing our sellers to liability they didn't need. We also created a new form that everybody here is going to love, the RF 171. It is the exclusive right to market for a lease, not property management. But if somebody wants you to put it in MLS for, just for rent, they handle everything. This is a form that you can collect a fee and offer a fee, but you don't need your E&O writer. It's just for that. They also created a form that you are not allowed to use at Village, and that's the RF 172, which is a property management form.
Oh, just strike it. Strike it from the book.
Strike it. And then they came up with, and Lloyd and Chris we've been talking about, they came up with the RF 308. And it is a whole form, and I'm passing that out on wire fraud. Because it's such a big deal. Now, we were very proactive and put that in our base commission form to make sure it's been covered. We are debating whether we want to go with this one or leave what we have, and we haven't got there yet.
Correct, yeah.
One thing I got asked yesterday from Beth Vincent was, she got one of these, not this one, which actually this one is out now. Actually, she got this one because it's already in transaction list, this one. She got asked by the other person to have her buyer sign theirs. Okay? And I don't think that's necessary. If each person signs their own, I don't think we've got to cross that up and get two signatures. Does that make sense? It doesn't hurt. It just, again, reiterates the problem, and that's good because we want to keep pounding, but you don't have to send the form over and have the other party sign it and vice versa.
True. The benefit to that would be is if you're representing a seller and the buyer on the other side is a victim of wire fraud and they can't close, then your seller is kind of torpedoed. And that happened to Ted where they almost lost the deal.
Right.
But the downside to it is that is a lot of hassle for you guys to get signatures on the other side. And that's kind of the end of the spectrum that we're leaning toward. So.
Well, and if this becomes standard across the state, then everybody will have it signed by their individual parties. So that's the only reason I'm thinking of adopting this and getting that's another story for another day. I just want you to know that because of Ring doorbells, did I talk about this before?
Because of what?
Ring. Yeah, we've added a whole paragraph in here on the listing and the buyers, telling people if you're a seller, you are responsible for any kind of legal ramifications that would arise for you recording. Okay? Because there are some, I don't know what the law is. I don't want you to know what the law is. Because I'm sure that it's like everything else. There's all these caveats and depending. Because you've got nanny cams. Those Ring doorbells do record audio as well as video. And they're not everything. So there is something, though, that you can't record. I don't know. Just know that you are to let your sellers know that if they get into a lawsuit, we are not liable for that. It's up to them, but we need to tell them that. And then the buyers, it says that the buyers beware that there could very possibly be recordings and videos showing property. The attorneys are advising that you, if you are a listing agent, put that in the remarks in MLS, that this property has a video. audio, either the doorbell or something. And I don't think that would hurt. That's gonna become a pretty standard kind of thing. So that's a new paragraph. And the other thing that I think is significant, does anybody have to do with greenbelt properties? You have to. We have put a big paragraph in here that if you have 15 acres or more, so if you never sell 15 acres or more, don't even worry about it. But if you have 15 acres and it's been in the greenbelt, which means that the seller or the owner has gotten a discount, I guess is the word, a rebate on taxes. Okay, so we have before, John?
It's actually a status where you get approved as agricultural or forest land if it's over 15 acres, and the property taxes are based off that status as opposed to residential. So property taxes drop. It's not a rebate, it's reduced dramatically.
Thank you.
Like,
So you're gonna have two choices when you execute a contract or draft it. It says buyer intends to maintain the property in the greenbelt classification, and if so, the buyer acknowledged that it is the buyer's responsibility to make timely and proper application to ensure the status. So the buyer has to. Buyer's failure to timely and properly make application will result in the assessment of rollback taxes, for which the buyer will be responsible. And buyers should consult with a tax assessor to know what that is. The second box you could check is buyer does not intend to maintain the property's greenbelt status, and rollback taxes shall be payable by the seller at the time of closing. So they're asking you to check one of these boxes if you're dealing in that particular scenario. Yes.
Would there be a benefit to the buyer changing the status? I mean, of the property, I would assume you'd want to keep it.
Well, he may not. Maybe he's buying
It
it
depends
and
on
wants.
what you want to do with the land.
Right.
You may not qualify. If the last people were just cutting hay on it, they're using that hay as part of their greenbelt. Well, if you're no longer gonna do that and you wanna just use it for whatever your intents are, you could end up paying all the rollback taxes, which could be quite a few $1,000, because they were in the greenbelt, you didn't continue it, and we can get screwed with it.
John,
whenever a property is sold, if it has greenbelt status, it has to be recertified. It doesn't happen automatically.
that's what it's saying,
You
that the
have to
buyer
have a
has to.
forestry person out to determine what percentage of the land is timber, or you have to recertify it. Is it going to be used for agriculture, like Tony said? So this will automatically cease to exist if the buyer doesn't get it recertified. It will not just automatically continue to.
Right, and they're putting the burden then on the buyer for the taxes if the buyer doesn't do that.
Although if you check the box and the buyer doesn't do it, then the seller is liable for it.
No, it says it, that's why we have it in here.
Right.
If they don't, the buyer is liable, and they sign that in the contract.
And although the other box says the seller is.
Well, it depends on which box you check.
Correct, right, that's what I'm saying, so if they check the box, it says the seller's responsible, then the seller better figure out how much taxes they are and work that into the deal, because they're gonna be hit with it after the fact, after it closes. So you wanna work that into the negotiation,
Right.
that the buyer agrees to pay blah, 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 thousands
Right,
of
that's why
dollars.
we have these two
Right,
options.
right. You don't just check the box, you gotta sort something
No,
out.
I always think before you check the box, you should figure out. Very wise. And then, one more thing, and I'll get off this stage. So we added, okay, I'm gonna see how many sharp tacks I have in here. So, what kind of days are in the contract? Good, okay. And all days roll, right? Except for Maggie's doing a great job. But I want to tell you, possession, closing date, possession date, you can move in on a week, right? Expiration of the offer. And the other one is the repair seller has to have done prior to closing, which is on the proposal and the repair amendment. What about delivery of trust? The what? Delivery of trust.
Agree,
No,
no.
five
non-rollers.
non-rollers. But see, you only have to remember one because you already know all the others. You're the only company that I have ever taught that could do that. I was just at GNR Friday, not one person knew that. And everyone was over 5 years of experience. So, you wanna know what the next step is? You're gonna love this, guys. In the event, oh, don't you love that? That always starts at, in the event the property is subject to mandatory association assessments, Ryan, or other fees which may impose a lien, seller shall cause to be delivered to buyer or buyer's closing agent not later than 7 days prior to closing, a lien payoff, a estoppel letter, or a statement of account reflecting that the account relating to the property is current and is setting forth the sum due to bring the account current. So what we're saying is 7 days before closing, you better have this all settled and show that this lien is either paid or it has the funds to pay within 7 days prior. That doesn't roll. Anytime you're going prior, it doesn't roll, obviously. But that's a good, isn't that a good one? So that you don't care?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
It's all related though to a lien.
Right, and only have gotten to closing, and now we find out this, and now we've got a delay or whatever.
What if the seller is counting on the funds from the transaction?
Well, that's okay, they have to show reflecting that the account relating to the property is current or setting forth the sum to bring. So, yeah, they have to show that it will, and your title company has to be able to. But we gotta start dealing with this 7 days prior, not the day of closing.
So how would they prove that they're going to use those funds to rectify?
Well, you have to have that you have to have a letter 7 days before showing the lien.
From
The seller, the seller's responsibility, right? So if you have a seller and there's like they haven't paid their homeowners and there's gonna be a lien on it and they're behind, we're not dealing with that at closing and find out they don't have the money in their proceeds.
So I have a question, because how would you ever know this? Is this through the title company, or is this through, how would you ever know if you were representing the buyer that this is how?
Ryan?
So really, the title companies are already doing this in some way. Whenever we get contracts in, we know if there's going to be an HOA, and we reach directly out to the HOA. And the HOA sends us a pretty lengthy form, sometimes 7 or 8 pages long, letting us know all the different charges, if the HOAs are current, how much are maybe in the credit bank that the seller has overpaid, and gives us all the information, so we know how to go from that and correct anything. But with this form, it's going to be interesting because sometimes the HOAs are, they take their sweet time getting back to us. And sometimes we're waiting on it last minute to get that information.
So we're putting the burden back on the seller.
Yeah, it's maybe.
So the seller's gonna have that.
What's the or else?
Yeah.
I'm a little unhappy about it. There's no or else. No, they didn't, and I wasn't on the committee last year.
They just showed the default.
You would be in default, and you've got potentially liability.
So this is for all liens, not just HOA liens?
Correct.
And when do y'all start running a title search usually? How long before closing?
We order it the same day we get your contract in. And the title searchers can take anywhere from 3 to 7 days to get back to us.
But remember,
So in theory, you should have this from the title search
No.
well before the 7 days.
No. The HOA never comes back on title search. When you go down to the Register of Deeds, the report that comes back is not gonna tell you, and you owe $240 to clear this up. You've gotta reach out to the HOA, just like you would a mortgage lender, to get a lien
But all the
payoff for
other
that.
liens would show up and were not HOA liens.
Yeah.
I mean, like IRS liens, for example,
Yeah.
would show up, so we would know about those along with those 7 days, maybe not the HOA liens in correspondence.
Yeah, but we're pretty much aware of almost all liens well before closing date. We're already working on any sort of sort of solutions if we need to get there. Things that we don't foresee are lawsuits being filed last minute.
The IRS was
What's that?
IRS was hard.
I'm passing out those notes, red line notes. I don't have enough, so if somebody wants to get somebody to help them make copies or they don't want it, you can get this on the front of the transaction.
It's on Facebook, Ashley put it on Facebook, I printed a copy of it somewhere.
Bobby, you forgot the best part. Binding agreement date change.
Yeah.
No, it did not change.
Just call it something different.
They changed the
No.
name. They changed the name.
They changed the name.
Can you hand me that?
No.
That's the best part.
Acknowledge acceptance.
Here is the new version. Sorry, Lauren, but this is the new version. Obviously, they didn't want it done separately.
This is nothing compared to my little gherkin here.
Okay, who binds the contract?
The last
Fine.
person to receive it. No, the person who received it after.
We don't buy that.
Excuse me, Tony, who binds the contract?
The buyers and sellers.
Buyers and sellers, we don't bind contracts. Buyers and sellers bind contracts. Do we have to sing again? Let's sing all together. Go ahead. Signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours. It is bound after the buyer and seller signs it, and the last person sends it back to the person. So if I'm the seller,
It's bound.
once it arrives in the email, you don't even have to open it up. As long as it hits your email, that's binding. And then we, as the agent that received it after the last person signed it, comes in. We say, oh, isn't this great? We have a binding contract and I received it on this date so we can count now. And here's why we reworded it. Instead of saying binding agreement date, it says acknowledgement of receipt. Blank so-and-so hereby acknowledges receipt of the final accepted offer on blank blank o'clock, and this shall be referred to as the binding agreement date for purposes of establishing performance deadlines as set forth in this agreement.
It's so much better. It's so much better.
So, I can't wait till somebody signs this before it's delivered. I know it's gonna happen. And then it's not bound. If it doesn't get back to the person, it is not bound. But you signing it doesn't bind it. The delivery is the binding. How do you like that, Lee?
I mean, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay. I think we are. There was one more thing I wanted to say, but
About the contract?
yeah.
I'll do it, let me do this and you can
Why
see,
don't you
think
do
about it.
that while I
Okay. That was a lot. You covered a lot. So, what I wanted to talk to you about is duty of lateral support. It's really easy. It's a really quick concept. It doesn't have a lot of exceptions to it, so I'm kind of pumped about that. This is the rule up here that we get from the Tennessee Supreme Court, but this is how it actually works out. So you have two adjacent lots like this. This homeowner over here builds first, okay? And they want to put a pool in their backyard, which means that they need what in their backyard? Relatively flat land. Yeah, bikinis, that's for sure, yeah. But they need relatively flat land, right? To build the pool. So what these people chose to do is they chose to excavate right here. And so they build a retaining wall right here at this spot, and then it goes flat over like that. So nice big retaining wall, kind of leans in a little bit probably to make sure that that support is happening. And let's say they did it the exact right way. They had a civil engineer look at it and everything is going to be functional for that wall for a long time. So then they come over here and they build their house, okay? And they've got their pool over here. Maybe it goes all the way across the backyard with the brown water in it. Sorry about the brown water. So now we've got somebody that comes in, and this is the way the situation is when it comes to village. We have a village agent that says, I have somebody that wants to build right here, but they're concerned that if they put a house right here, in 15 years when their kids are graduating from high school, this wall might fail, or maybe they didn't build it right, and what's gonna happen to my house over here? And so the answer is right here in this paragraph, and it says landowners who excavate or improve their land are compelled to do so in a manner that protects adjoining property in its natural state from collapsing or eroding away. A landowner is not prohibited from excavating in a natural soil along a boundary line, which is exactly what happened here, but must replace by artificial means the natural support removed in the process. Strict liability attaches for damage caused by removing the naturally necessary lateral support of land in its natural state with no proof of negligence required. Okay? So that's what strict liability means in Tennessee. When you think about strict liability, usually lawyers think of dynamite. That is the number one thing for strict liability. So if you have somebody over here blasting, and both of these houses get damaged while the blasting happens, all you have to prove that it was during the time of the blasting that it occurred, and you don't have to show proof of negligence. You don't have to show that this guy did something wrong or could have done it better. Strict liability attaches from the damages. And the same way with this duty of lateral support. So if this house starts to crack or fail, and there's failure of the lateral support here, you don't have to show that the wall was built in a negligent way. Just by virtue of it failing, this guy is liable for this stuff. So that's important to know whichever house you're in, right? You need to know that rule. And so that's going to be a good thing to coach and counsel your clients on. Now don't feel like you've got to memorize this paragraph right here. Just remember the concept of strict liability, and that'll help you out a lot. John?
What if the property is sold and it's the next owner of the one who has the wall, and they assume the liabilities from the people who did it?
Sure do. Yeah. Yeah, they sure do. Because it's attacking. Yeah, it's a good question. All right, we've got a lot to cover. Huh? Oh, yeah. Go. No.
Okay, one more thing. We took out some things in the property, the residential property condition disclosure. And I just want you to know, and you may not like it, but the seller doesn't have to disclose mold or methamphetamine. Doesn't mean that if they have it, they don't have to disclose it, but it means it's not one of the check boxes. And if you know it, you still do. But the reason we took it out is because those words are not in the rules and laws of the Tennessee Real Estate Commission, and we don't want to make the seller more liable than they are by law, just because they listed with the realtor. So I just want you to know there's some things that have been, again, taken out of the property condition disclosure for residential. Okay? If you know it, oh, it was a methamphetamine house, you have to disclose. Lastly, if anybody is interested at 10:30, my last Jumpstart class for the year is going to take a proficiency test with a contract. And I dare all of the agents to come and just take this and see how you do.
Will there be a prize?
You might get a prize when you turn this in January. I will have prizes.
Or you can come up Bobby Gray too. You might find something.
Okay, that'll be at 10:30. You can come and take that up.
10:30. That's right. She's going to be. Yeah, she's going to be a proctor at 10:30. Colin, come on down. Colin is our fashionista, that's for sure. I just love your raps.
Really?
Yeah.
Can we talk? Does anybody see what we're dealing with here?
I just put fresh batteries in this.
We have two new agents today that I'd like to introduce. Melissa Becker joining us in Hillsborough Village. She and David will become the fabulous Becker bunch of some sort. And then Stacy Cleggan is going to be joining us today. Everyone who has joined us in 2018, please stand up.
All right. That's me, I'm standing.
Wow. Woo! All right. Everybody for So if you have not met any of these lovely people that have joined us this year, introduce yourself. Take a minute to chat amongst yourselves, and we'll be back in a sec.
1 minute, it's all yours.
All right, guys, let's bring it in because we have something really exciting to talk about next. Actually, you go ahead and flip it over. I am so pumped about this, and I'm going to stand in front of it so you can't read it until I talk about it. Anna, come on down. I want you to know that your education team here at Village has been working hard to make sure that we put 2019 together and make it stronger, better, more robust, with more diverse opportunities for all categories of production in Village. And this is how we're going to lead off the year. So our education team, of course, consists of Bobby. I help out when I can on that team, and Colin and Anna. The four of us are going to be nursing this education program all through 2019. And this is how we're going to start this off. So we are putting together what I think is the best discussion on short-term rentals that has ever happened in the city of Nashville, even including what happens with the Metro Council, because sometimes that gets a little sideways. So what you'll see here is we've got John Michael. He is the zoning administrator. He's agreed to come down, and he is kind of like the lead dog when it comes to short-term rentals inside of Metro zoning. Emily Lamb is the zoning chief for Metro Codes. She's recently moved over to Codes, but she's the former assistant Metro attorney that was prosecuting these short-term rental violations in the courthouse. So she's really good at this kind of thing, and she can tell you about the prosecution end of it. David Taylor is the vice chair of the Metropolitan Board of Zoning and Appeals. So if you have a problem with a codes ruling, an administrative ruling, you can appeal it, and the first appeal is the Board of Zoning Appeals here. You can't appeal it to the court before you exhaust your administrative remedies. That means it has to go before the BZA before it can hit the courts. So they do a lot of work with short-term rentals, and they have to look at exceptions, provide exceptions for people who want to beg their way out of the one-year moratorium for violations and that kind of thing. So he's got a really good working knowledge of short-term rentals. And then Megan McCrae, that you've heard many times before here at Village, because she's been so kind to play along with us and come and visit with us. She's the president of the National Short-Term Rental Association, NASTRA. And this panel is going to be moderated by our own in-house expert, Deborah Volley. Is Deborah here this morning? I don't think she made it this morning. Okay.
Watching online.
Oh, gotcha. Hi, Deborah. So she's going to be moderating that panel because we want our moderator to be nimble and think on their feet, and we know that Deborah knows more about short-term rentals inside Village more than anyone. So she's going to be there doing that. We're going to do it at the Belcourt because we think we want to kind of get out of the house, provide some extra seats so that we can kind of spread out. And we're also going to invite some other folks to come with us and play along with us that day. So it's going to be a community project.
And they can invite.
Oh, that's right. Absolutely.
Realtors only though.
Yeah, that's right.
We are not inviting clients because we don't want this to turn into clients who have complaints about the system. It's not that forum. It's for realtors for education.
And so if you have realtors and other companies, that please invite.
All four of these people have been promised that we will ask only realtors to come and that those realtors will commit to a productive discussion. Because the last thing these four people want to do is get up on stage and be the victim of a shouting match, right? So this is going to be an opportunity to share that knowledge that is a very divisive topic in our community. And this is going to be the best discussion on short-term rentals in the city of Nashville. I think in the history of Nashville. So I'm pretty pumped about that. That's going to be Thursday, January 10th. Now, Ashley sent out a sign-up link. We already have about 26 people signed up for it. Oh, I'm sorry, 126 people signed up for this already. So if you have not signed up, please get in there and sign up because we definitely want a purple wave in this room. And do not miss this opportunity. You will be so sad if you did. If you're not dealing with short-term rentals now, I'm sure you will soon. Fair to say? Ashley sent it out today. Ashley, can we put that on Facebook today? Yeah. So we'll also drop in an exclusive today. So if you want to, you can wait until that drops in. But it was sent yesterday.
We have a lot of people that aren't receiving that. Is there some reason?
Well, this is strictly from MailChimp. It didn't come through Tribus or anything. So check your junk mail first.
Yeah, check your spam folders because it came from not from Tribus.
But we will get you you that link. I promise you that. And you are going to have that link within 48 hours because today it is going to be in Facebook. So make sure you get a chance to get that signed up. And I'm going to ask for your help. Please give a round of applause to our education team who's worked to put stuff like this together. They do a ton of work, that's for sure. All right, so next up we have Mr. Ken Searcy. Come on down.
Thanks very much. I wanted to just point out a few things on our application form. This would be the low-tech way of ordering our warranty, but I've had some confusion over the free listing coverage and how you order that. There's not a box you can check online or on the form for free listing coverage. What you're doing is you're setting up one of the two options here, either the $425 with a $100 deductible, $460 with a $50. So you set that up for the buyer, but you check that it's listing coverage. So in other words, provided you get a buyer that wants the warranty, you're setting it up, which of the two would they get? So it's intended to be complimentary for providing it for the buyer, but it can be canceled. So free listing coverage per se is not an option, but it's you check listing coverage and process of setting up what an end user would benefit from if it doesn't cancel. Does that make sense?
No.
Yeah.
Did anybody get that?
So in other words, when you go
I
in,
didn't, so
okay,
I didn't.
you had a look of confusion on your face.
Yeah.
So when you go into our website to order a warranty, you're going to
For
pick
who?
you're setting it up for a listing. So
Okay,
you're going to
so
check
there's
listing.
no buyer.
There's no buyer.
So we just want the free one.
Yeah, you're going to check listing coverage, but you're going to pick out one of the two plans. Or when you call in, which happens when you call into the company, you're not going to say I want the free listing coverage. What you're going to say is I want to set up a listing warranty, $100 deductible option for $425. And what you do with it after that point depends on how the deal plays out and what you do, and that's fine. But you're just setting up the listing coverage with one of the two options. If you call the home office and say I want the free listing coverage, they're not going to know what you're talking about per se. You're just setting up listing coverage on behalf of your seller, and you're picking out one of the two plans for the buyer. Does that clear it up, Bobby? It still isn't cleared up.
Has anybody had problems ordering listing coverage for their sellers?
Scott, can you help out?
No.
Okay.
Well, just because I never really thought about it, but so you check buyer coverage?
No, you check listing coverage. But when you check listing coverage, you're setting up one of the two plans that would then convey to the buyer,
But you don't
provided that.
have a buyer.
But you don't have a buyer, right? In other words, it's the same two buying options. Let's say, for example, another way this can play out is if you're setting up the, you want to offer the free $425 coverage. So you're going to set it up as a $425. When you get a buyer, you can change that to the $50 deductible if that's what the buyer negotiates in, if they want the $50 deductible plan. So all I'm saying is when you set it up, you're setting up the free listing coverage with one of the two buying options.
Has anybody set up the free listing coverage? This could be where our problems
Yeah,
are.
I think
Well,
it's
maybe
time
so.
for a to Z coverage of this whole
Because
thing.
this is not computing to
Yeah.
anybody.
Okay,
I know
so-
you keep talking
Right.
and saying, but I can see that it's
Okay.
not right.
So, all warranty companies offer free listing coverage, some 6 months, ours during the life of the listing. All I'm saying is when you go in to set it up, you're setting up one of the two plans that would convey to a buyer. You're just setting it up as a free listing warranty. Does that make sense? There's the two buying options, the $425, the $460. You're just going to check the box for the listing coverage, and then later, when you get a contract, if you're putting the warranty through, you change that to a pending close. Just like other things that you do will be pending close at that point once you have a contract.
And
Yes.
if the buyer doesn't want the
Right.
warranty,
Then you send an email in and have it canceled. Yep.
but you still have the listing coverage.
Right, exactly. Until it's canceled. So I would ride that until the close, and then send an email to cancel it. If it's not canceled, one of the downsides of us having unlimited listing coverage, let's say that Tony has a listing and for some reason it doesn't sell, somebody else picks it up, that listing coverage is still going to be on there 5 years down the road until it's canceled off because we don't have a cancellation date on ours the way others do. Ours is for an unlimited listing time. So logistically, it would be helpful if you cancel it if it's not going to actually go to the buyer. Then I wanted to point out the sellers coverage plans, they're getting 10 items at no cost. This is on the bottom inside of the warranty. One of those is List Secure, which helps out with legal challenges to the seller. So if they're ever sued by the buyer, they can file and be reimbursed for up to $1,000 in legal claims. And then if they want to cover their kitchen appliances and heating and air, $75 upgrade, still not paid until the close, if they want to cover their own kitchen appliances and heating and air during the listing period. All right, does that make sense?
And if it never goes to closing?
Yeah, then it can, then you just let us know and it can be canceled out.
And they don't pay the.
And they don't pay the 75.
Even if they had a claim?
Even if they have a claim, they don't pay the 75. But it adds to the base price if they do. So, so I wanted to just point out those things because some people have never taken the time to look at the
What does
brochure.
that mean, it adds to the base?
In other words, if they add the $75 listing coverage, and it's going through to the buyer, all of a sudden it's going to be the 75 plus the 425 or plus the 460 because they benefited for the $75 coverage while it's listed. Unless it's all canceled off.
Is it, okay, we are gonna have
But
to.
that 75 is debited to the seller, right?
Well, yeah.
It's clear to me.
I don't think anybody's clear, and that's maybe our big problem, Ken. Maybe we should just call you a new order on our board.
I can't do that because I'm usually driving, but you can call home office, but yes, Virginia.
So when I signed up for it, I have a seller, so I signed up for the seller coverage, and I thought that was the free coverage.
It is.
But I thought you were saying that I pick one of the buyer coverage.
Well, in other words, you're picking out a deductible. Just think of it this way: you're picking out a deductible for the seller, either the 50 or the 100.
Why don't you buy it?
Exactly.
So I signed up for buyer coverage plan if it's free, even though everybody benefits my seller.
Correct. Correct.
So at what time would you ever sign up for a seller coverage?
Sell it up when you get the listing, and you just that's when you would sign it up.
So you're only selecting the 425 and the 460 to determine what your seller would pay on a deductible if they made a claim.
Exactly. Thank you, Lee.
So like you're saying seller coverage, and then you pick either $100 for your seller to pay or $50 for your seller to pay. That's the only reason you select anything regarding the buyer, which is
Right.
not the deductible.
Correct.
That your seller had to make.
Yeah. Very helpful. Yeah. And thanks. And well, having done such a poor job presenting today, now I'm going to ask for but anyway, we are having a contest for who can get the most positive reviews between now and Christmas Day. And I've got some cards here which point to a site that you could submit a review, and that would be very helpful. I really enjoyed working with your group. There's enough people in this room to far and above win the contest for me, and I'm leaving here going to another group that also has the same number. So I don't mind some other people. Up to a $500 Amazon gift card, so it's a pretty significant opportunity. And
I hear he's not above paying people for votes.
yeah, exactly. Well, and my courtesy is a positive review for you. So give me a review, and I will review back. And I've got some out there that I have done for people for review. So here's some cards. Please take these and pass them along. And it would really mean a lot. I haven't.
How long does it take to do those?
Just seconds. But they say mention me in the review. That way they make sure they give credit to me and not say Tiffany, who also works in the market.
Is it easier to do a review than order a seller's market?
And it's easier to do a review than explain how to So anyway, all right, thank you very much.
I'll try to make this not as complicated. Okay, so with the end of the year comes the Awards of Excellence and filling out an application to apply for Awards of Excellence. So what I want to do is, first of all, the award ceremony is going to be March 9th of 2019. And our theme is going to be Havana Nights. So what I want to say to you guys, for new agents, this is a great time for you to come. It's a fun event. We have dinner, we have drinks, we have dancing, all of that good stuff. It's good for you to come support your peers who are actually going to be getting an award, and also a good time for you guys to network It's $75, and you can bring a date with you if you like. So again, March 9th, book your calendars for that.
It said 85.
Said 85.
I'm sorry, 85. Scratch that. Okay, there you go. All right, so the next slide we're going to do, so for eligibility, so keep in mind too, it's the end of the year and I want you guys to be prepared and I want you to get your applications in soon. There's deadlines that are going to happen here. So to be eligible for an award, you have to have 8 involvement credits with GNR. To find those, I'm going to show you a link in just a minute where you're going to find that. You also have to have met one of the transaction volume level requirements in 2018. This is from January 1st to December 31st. All the paperwork has to be submitted to Ashley here at Village on the 7th by 5 p.m. When your application goes into GNR, we grade it. If there are errors or items that we need that are not included in your paperwork, you have until the 5th on the 11th to get your paperwork in. Not meeting the deadlines could result in you guys not getting your application in submitted. So here's what the application looks like. And to find it, you would just go to this link here, and it'll pull the application right up for you. I'm going to have these applications for everybody with Ashley, and the folders will also be there later on today, so you can pick them up anytime today or on. Go back to the slide. So this is your application. It's very important that you complete this in full. So you're going to have all of your name, your brokerage information, the award level that you are applying for. The first one is going to be silver. It's a minimum of 2 million and 15 transactions, and then the awards go up from there. You'll also answer the additional questions. It's very important that you sign it and your broker signs it. So that's the application, and that's the link that you can find it. Okay, along with your application, there's going to be a folder that you're going to put everything in. This is going to be at Ashley's desk, so that's where you can find the folders. Again, it's important that you fill out the front of the folder. So all of these are going to be the items that you're going to need to complete and attach into your folder. You're also going to want to circle the award that you're applying for. This gray section right here, don't worry about filling out. We will do that when we get the applications and we start grading. Okay, so the supporting documents that you need. First of all, again, your application needs to be filled out fully and signed by your broker. The GNR awards folder needs to be filled out in full as well and contains all of the proper documentation. Please make sure that you paperclip that documentation to your folder so it's not lost. So, your involvement credits, you need to print a copy of that, and this is where you can go to find them. Again, you need 8 involvement credits to be considered for an award. If you are making a donation to get the additional point, the donation has to be in by December 31st. If you pay by credit card and you do not get a receipt, that means that your transaction did not go through. So just make sure that you get a receipt and your donations are in by the 31st. You also need to print a copy of your RealTrax productivity report. If you have, you're going to basically take the number of transactions that you have and you're going to double that. RealTrax only gives you the side of the transaction that you handle. So if you handle the buy side, you're only going to get 0.5. You're going to take that total number and you're going to times it by 2. So if you have 7.5 transactions in RealTrax, times it by 2, you have 15 and you qualify if you met the $2 million. Questions there? Okay, it's fairly simple. It explains it on the application as well.
I was going to say leases count, correct?
Correct. Let me get to that in just a second. Okay, the next one is non-MLS. So if you have a for sale by owner, you have a new build, you have an auction, and it's not an MLS, there is a separate form that you need to print, which is at this link here. And you also need to include the sales contract in the settlement statement with the MLS log. So if you go to the next screen, this is the non-MLS form. Again, it says right here that you need to attach a copy of the sales contract and the closing statement, and you must fill this out in full. So for every non-MLS listing that you have, you're going to fill out this form and attach the necessary paperwork. Okay? The next form is going to be leases. Leases are included in this. So if you have a lease that went through in 2018, January 1st to December 31st, it's also included, and you have to, again, attach all of the paperwork to this form. Now, on a lease, you have to be physically paid. It cannot be a retainer. It has to be paid commission to you. All right?
It's a referral for commercial use, like,
What's that?
a referral, commercial use referral.
No. That's actually not good. Okay, next one. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a heads up because we do want to get all of this paperwork in. It's the end of the year. We're going into the holidays, so make sure that you grab an application if you're eligible. Get it filled out, get it into Ashley. We want to make sure that all of your documentation is submitted prior. If anything is missing out of your application or it is filled out incorrectly, this is going to slow down the process. And if it's not corrected by the 11th at 5 p.m., then unfortunately you're not going to be eligible for the award. If you are eligible for an award, the fee is $175 and Village covers that. So the dinner and everything is actually free to you guys. So I urge you, if you have the 8 points and you have the sales and the volume, apply for an award. It's actually a fun night and it's free to you guys. And last but not least, have all of your information and documents in Ashley by January 7th at 5 p.m. So that's the awards. Any questions? Sweet. Applications, everything will be by Ashley's desk. Thank you guys.
A solid round of applause there. We appreciate it. You guys are great at getting free lunches, you know. It's easy to get a free lunch as a realtor. But this is your one chance to get a free dinner, you know. That doesn't happen that often. So come in for that. Let's do some new listings. Nick, I saw you were here. Are you still around? There you are. You got two, right?
I do. So 711 Cherokee is, we're in Highland Heights. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,100 square feet. And they completely renovated the inside of it. They're doing some landscaping now. It's vacant, obviously, so I can get you guys in and look at it. It's going to be just under 300. We haven't settled on the price yet, but hopefully live in January. And then I also have 818 Meridian Street, and it is 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, 4,000 square feet. It's huge. And it's a 2-story house right across from Polk, if you guys have had dinner there. It's beautiful. It's also zonal commercial, so if you wanted to run a business out of that location, you can do that with the current zoning. And we're working on that, hopefully late January on that one. It'll be around 700. So let me know if you got anybody.
Look, that's great. I like the ish too. Ish is translated as how much you got. That's how much they're listening for. Brett, where are you? Are you still around the corner here? Oh, gotcha.
You're watching out too.
Okay, so the first one, all of these are actually going to be going live in January, so it's like the first week of January to the middle of January. The first one is going to be 1111A McKinney Avenue. This is a great location. It's an HPR attached. It's about 2,000 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. Built in 2016. Really nice finishes in this house. There's hardwood all throughout. There's high doors with transom windows, built-in bookcases, fireplace, large master suite. It's hitting the market the first week of January, and we're going to go in at $429,900. The next one is Anderson Road, and you can actually be my neighbor here. This is a 1-level condo. It's about 1,600 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, with a lake view from the front door. So this is Anderson Recreational Park. You've got the lake all around you and literally the park all around you. So you've got hiking trails, biking trails, campground, beach, boat launch, all of that good stuff. This one's going to be hitting the market at $164,900.
Which lake?
Person Creek. Yeah. And then the last one's going to be Maxwell and Bailey. It's 705 Cleo Miller Drive. This is a new build. It was bought by an investor. He's decided that he wants to sell it. Nobody's ever lived in it. It's brand new. It's got blinds. It's got a washer and dryer. It's got a refrigerator. It's 1,939 square feet. It's or soft feet. It's 3 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, concrete flooring, 3 levels, 2 decks, 2-car garage, walking distance to 5 points. Again, never lived in it. Includes all of the appliances. Again, all of these will be in the market January 1st if you want to get in and you want more information.
Love that. Never lived there. My tags are still on it. Chandler, I'm coming to you. You got one brand new like that? Gently use, though, right?
1707 Straightway Avenue. Probably hit the market January 7th, 8th. We're still playing with that date. It's a 3-2, 2 bedrooms down, 1 bedroom up with bonus space upstairs. Nice backyard, fully fenced. They have a nice privacy fence gate in the front.
360-ish.
360-ish.
Man, the ishes are all around. It's December. How much you got? Okay, we're going to hold off on the rest of these for round 2 coming up. But we do have Brian Carden coming up to talk to us about
Insurance holiday spirit, right?
Well, yes. You know, I thought since I'm thinking a week from today, I'm going to be sitting at Mom's house, eating myself silly on Christmas morning. And rather than dig into insurance and talk about that other stuff, I would just want to take this time to say thank you. January, I start my 8th year here, which is hard to believe. It feels like I just started. So for those of you that have recommended me, I am eternally grateful. Hopefully I continue to live up to your recommendations, and I look forward to a great 19. How many of you saw my blog last week? I tried to send it to everybody. Some of you read it, some don't. But what's the old saying? When one door closes, another door opens. And as you know, you guys have blessed me with enough that I can travel now. So I went to Athens, Greece, and toured the Isles this summer. While I was there, I'm walking on a tour, just chatting with people in the group. There's like 40 of us. It's just a mixed bag of folks. And I meet a woman, and she's telling me she's in the middle of making an investment company change. And for those of you that don't know, I'm Series 7 and 65 licensed and probably have about $25 million under management in assets in addition to what I do with the home and auto world with you guys. And she asked me if you decided what you're going to do with regards to Peachtree planning. I said no, but I can drink enough and we'll figure it out. So
basically you're hitting on her, right?
No, absolutely, unequivocally not. No, she is a wonderful lady. So we became good friends. Did I miss something there?
Yes, you did.
Okay. I will defer. She comes to me in September and she's like, have you made up your mind? And I went, kind of, sort of. She said, well, I've had a marketing company approach me and I want to form my own boutique company and I can't do it by myself. Are you willing to partner with me? So, which way does this go? This goes this way? There. So, I am proud to announce my new partnership called Stewardship Private Wealth Management. It's exciting. When we sat down, her name's Kelly Gabriel, and I said, Kelly, here's the deal. I love insurance. I'm really, really good at it. Matter of fact, I think I'm better than most people at it. Assets, I've just kind of grown tired of it. She went, great, because I hate insurance. So what we are doing is doing a series of workshops. We did a workshop in, last month? Ashley was our gracious hostess. We had 140 people sign up, 60 people show up, and 30 wanting to sit down for personal appointments. And we are doing workshops primarily right now on Social Security, helping unbundle the myths. If everything goes well, we're going to be doing a couple in this room in February. I'm really excited about it. It enables me to do what I do and have somebody that's even smarter than me working alongside. So that's what's going on. But nothing changes with regards to me and Elite Insurance. I'm still going to be here. I'm going to be asking you for your business and your recommendations. And I'm going to keep just doing what I'm doing. Now, I want to leave you with one of my favorite Christmas jokes. It's minister approved.
Oh, come on. Exactly.
It's not there.
Okay, I know. Well, hey, it's a little Johnny joke. How's that? Okay. And y'all know about little Johnny. He always gets himself in trouble. So, little Johnny's sitting down, and he's going to write Santa for what he wants for Christmas, and the mom comes up to him and says, no, 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 no. You have been so bad this year, you are not writing Santa. You're going much higher. Son, you're writing Jesus. And so he sits down, and he's going, oh, great, how do I do this? Dear Jesus, I've been a really good boy this year. I can't lie to Jesus. It's not going to work, so he throws that away. Dear Jesus, I've been a pretty good boy this year, and that's not going to work. So, dear Jesus, I've been a good boy. He says, well, that's not going to work here. So anyway, next morning happens. Mom wakes up, and she sees a ton of crumpled up paper pile the trash can. And she goes over and she's dusting the house and she goes by the manger. And she notices that Mary is missing. And there's a little sticky note there that says, "Dear Jesus, if you ever want to see your mother again." Merry Christmas, y'all.
Woohoo! All right. I'm going to scratch my joke because it's not that good. Just introduce Roger Gore. You guys, come on down, Roger. You guys know that Connie has been here doing a lot of great work inside of Village with F&B, but it has gotten to a point where she's brought in some help and some outstanding help. If you weren't here when I introduced him before, I've done a lot of work with Roger. I know Ryan has too, a lot of you guys have in the room, and we're so thrilled to have Roger on the F&B team and in-house here. And I get to see you all the time when I'm going to the bathroom. Now, his office is not in the bathroom. It's just every time I make that right, I'm always looking dead at it. So, yeah. So take it away, Roger. Yeah. Did you blush?
I did.
Okay. It's hard to make this guy blush, I promise you.
Hey, so please look past a little bit of rustiness. It's been a while since I've been in front of all of y'all as a group. Looking back, being into the year, I thought we'd look back at what I thought was the biggest change in the mortgage industry in 2018. I don't know if any of y'all have your personal guesses, but I would say it was interest rates. So we saw a spike in interest rates that was the largest in 7 years. There's a graph, there you go. Shows you on January 1 of this year, we were across the U.S. as an average at 395. We just ended yesterday at about 4.637. And if you were just a couple of weeks ago, we were actually trending at like 4.849. So we're at about a 1% increase in rates over the last year. I wanted to kind of give you an example, if you go to the next slide, as to what that translates to. What does that mean in a real life example? So if you've got a borrower, and we're going to make this real simple, just a 20% down, 30-year fixed rate, we're ignoring taxes and insurance and PMI. You've got a borrower that can afford a $1,200 payment. That's their max. And the interest rate was 4.5%. They would have qualified for a $295,000 purchase price. Let's fast forward to a 1% interest rate increase, which would have been, like I said, 2 weeks ago. That borrower has now dropped to $265,000. They've lost $30,000 in buying power. And I think the even bigger whammy is, you know, that real estate prices also went up during that time. So there was even a bigger effect if you look at it that way. Next slide. What are we going to do for 2019? So I pulled a couple of resources, and these kind of seemed in line with my expectations and what I've been reading. Freddie Mac estimates that we're going to be up to about 5.2 by the third quarter. And then the Mortgage Bankers Association, and then they cite the unemployment rate being the lowest in 50 years. They cite a healthy, robust economy. They like to talk about the millennials really getting into a home buying mode from their point of view. And they're predicting about a 5.1 interest rate by mid-year. Any questions?
Cheer us up, Roger.
It's good information to know. I mean, you know, I like to sit with the pre-approval and actually kind of discuss this, especially with first-time homebuyers. You know, how many of them do you find they sit on the fence and they're fighting over this one purchase price over $5,000, or you're back and forth on counters over $3,000? Then they let that go. 3 months later, they come back and they can't even afford where they were. So I like to kind of have that discussion, show them some real life examples at pre-approval, so they're really educated as to, you know, what the timeliness of their decision can mean. All right.
I love it. I love it. This is a good graph. How many people would like to have access to this graph? Look, I've got, look at these hands. So, Roger, would you mind getting with Ashley and popping that up on Facebook so they can view that? Okay. Look at that. Look at that. They've already worked it out. Because I think this is going to be a great tool that, you know, for your end of year message, maybe 1st of January, hey, get on it. Because this is where we are right now, and we're headed this direction. And I think with that, if you paint the landscape that way, not to do any fear mongering, of course, but I think that's going to get them excited about making moves. So, I think for another little touch of humor, we've got Ryan Lux coming down, and as Ashley says, his slides never disappoint. So let's see what you got, Ryan.
Just picture me making my slides Friday afternoon, having a stiff drink down there, Rudy Title.
You have drinks on Friday?
So real quick, I just want to talk about the GNR Awards. Rudy Title loves going to them. We are a pretty big sponsor every year, and for this year, for next year, we're going to be the dessert sponsor, and so that's a pretty big partner for that. And we're going to be there. We're going to have at least 4 to 6 people there having a great time. We'd love to hang out with all you guys. A lot of times we don't get to hang out outside of the office down there, so it's nice to have some drinks and cut loose and have some bonding time. So hopefully see you guys there. And if you see me, come say hey.
Oh, hey, by the way, you got, I'm stealing some of your time. You guys probably remember, how many people know Mary Frances? Quite a few people in the room. She got married in Cuba, in Havana, 2 years ago. Beth and Jane were there, and I don't think either one of them were here. But I showed her the theme, and I think she's going to wear her wedding dress that she had made by a little lady in Havana. It's like this big pink ruffly thing. I think she's going to wear it that night. But she told me I had to promise to wear something that she picked out. So we'll see.
It's the same dress.
Probably. You in that dress, too.
Alright, so Christmas is upon us, and we're going to pick up where we left off, talking about Santa Claus coming onto your property, with permission though, generally. So we're going to talk about easements. And just a little refresh here, recap, legally binding non-possessory interest in another party's property, which just means that somebody has the right to cross or otherwise use someone else's land for a specified purpose. So easements come in many forms, and last week we talked about the express easement, which is that it's an easement in writing. It's very clear, it's easy to read, you can look at it, although sometimes not very clear, but it is in writing. Today we're going to talk about the implied easements, which are easements that are not in writing, but just as enforceable as the express easements are. And I think these are the most important for us to know exist, because they're not in writing. So we have to know that they do exist, even though it's not easy to find. So an implied easement is an easement that is not in writing, but because of the surrounding facts, the easement is implied and deemed valid. So here is an example of an implied easement, and that's called an easement by necessity. And that means that the court will imply an easement by necessity when the use of one parcel of land depends on using a portion of an adjoining parcel of land. So the biggest example of this is that the parcel is landlocked. They have no access. They have no driveway that connects to a public road. So here's a really cool picture. And here's Bill's property, and here's your property. And you don't have access to that road, but you've got to get there somehow. So the law provides you a way to get an easement over Bill's property, even without his consent, to access that road. So we'll talk about how to do that in just a few. There is another type of easement out there that's called an easement by prescription. And that's where the courts will apply an easement by prescription when a person has used a portion of someone else's land without their permission for at least 20 years. So this is very similar to adverse possession. Now, adverse possession is where you use someone else's land without their consent for a certain amount of time. You can claim ownership over that land. Well, this is the same thing, except you're not claiming ownership, you're just claiming the ability to use their land for an easement, which means you can cross through it, and you're not claiming that you own it, but you can use it. So this is weird. In law school, I didn't really like these concepts, because I don't like the ability to take someone else's land from them. But it does exist. It's a very old concept, and it does have a pretty good purpose to it, but here's the rationale here, pulled from the internet. Long-standing patterns of land use should be protected, and a diligent user or occupant of land should be rewarded at the expense of the careless title holder. So kind of a weird thought there. So here are some examples. A homeowner who walks across a vacant commercial lot to access retail stores or mass transit. So that's where you're walking down and over 8 South or something like that, and you're cutting across one of those commercial lots, and everybody does that for so long that it gets to a point where the owner of that property can't block those people from using it. So that's kind of a weird theory there. Property owner who has access to a public road but decides to take a shortcut through someone else's land to the major highway. So kind of same thing here, just a little bit different facts. You're just cutting through someone else's land. And here's a big one that really applies to us here in the room today. A driveway or fence was thought to be on the boundary line, but is actually encroaching on the neighbor's property. We see this quite a bit. So an example of this would be that someone's driveway sits a few feet onto the neighbor's property. If the driveway is there for a certain amount of time without the owner's consent, then you can actually enforce that the driveway has to stay there and your client has easement rights to use that driveway, even though the neighbor is now claiming to put a fence down the middle of it and block it off, which I've seen that before. And it's,
on that one, I just taught this yesterday, so they're looking at me saying you're lying. Or I'm lying. Because we've had so many cases where this has come up and we have lawsuits because they want it moved. And you're saying they don't have to?
under certain situations and certain facts. Now, an easement by prescription, it has to be used for at least 20 years. So we're talking long-standing patterns of use. And this little note here, it's possible to tack on to the previous owner, but it gets a little bit more complicated there. And I'm going over these
I just want to make
ideas
sure that
really
this
generally.
one is not an automatic, just because that's been that way.
Yeah,
Doesn't
definitely
mean it-
not.
Okay.
Definitely not automatic. But it's possible to enforce it under certain situations.
Hey, Brian, enforcement means going to a court and having a lawsuit and having a judge declare, oh, well, there you go.
That's my next slide. So maybe I have an implied easement. Now what do? What happens when your client says, I feel like I should have the rights to use that? Well, and you go to your neighbor and say, hey, I think I have an easement here. And they're going to say, get lost. So you actually have to file a lawsuit in court to enforce that right. There is a law in Tennessee, it's very clear, in that it has the statute, and you just file a lawsuit based on that statute against the neighbor, and you'll go in front of a judge, look at the facts, the judge will look at everything, and he'll say, yes, there's an easement, or no.
What happens if they do that? I mean, what happens if we find this out prior to closing? What would you advise us as realtors? I've been saying, clear it up because you're gonna get stuck.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna get stuck.
It's going to be best to clear it up. That's obviously going to be the best answer. But sometimes, if the neighbor won't work with you, it's not looking like it's going to be an easy fix. Filing a lawsuit going in front of a court is not going to be a 30-day thing. It can be drawn out. Like this example I'm going to talk about here has been drawn out for about 8 to 10 years. So it can get real messy. This one is a real-life example up in Goodlettsville. Some of you may have even heard about it at some point. The property was listed for sale recently, again, from a subsequent owner. So it came back across my desk. When Lloyd was with us, we've studied this case as the courts put out the findings and all that. We would study this case and look at it, and it's pretty crazy. So in this situation here, the landowner in A owns all of this. This is a road here. It's a public road that turns into a private road. A is the owner of this land here. A put up a gate right here, blocking access to B. B has a driveway right here. They were using this. However, now A wants to prevent them from being able to use that. So this case is very complicated. I'm going to kind of overgeneralize it, but I just want to show you what can happen in something like this. So B files a lawsuit against A and says, I think I should have an easement here by right because I don't have any access to any other road. So I should have access to come through here. A says, nope, I don't think you should. You can figure out a different way to get in, and they're going to fight it. So the court actually steps in, looks at all the facts, and out of nowhere decides to seize land from him and give B the right to use that. And their thinking on this was that because this is a public road, there is a public right-of-way a certain distance off of each road. So they are letting B tie into the public right-of-way that is granted because that's a public road. So they got really creative with it.
That's what I would have done.
Yeah. So they didn't have to take B's land from him. And C, who just happens to be there, and gets decided on it. So obviously C files another lawsuit to fight that, and he ends up losing it because that's a public right-of-way. So this just kind of is an example to show you what could happen.
That is it.
Yeah.
What happens in, like, if something's going on for 8 or 10 years, what happens during the process to be like, do they say, hey, temporarily go ahead and do what you're doing, or you can't until we work it out, or, like, since it's
Good
going on so
question.
long?
Yeah, good question.
That
I know.
Hatfields is a McCoy.
Yeah.
I got an answer.
Yeah, go ahead, Lloyd.
Usually, somebody will file a temporary restraining order just to keep the status quo until there's a resolution of the case. And usually that's gonna involve a court order, hey, you have to take the gate off until we can get this case to disposition.
Yeah, and in this case, actually, it was, they left the gate there, but B was using this during that lawsuit. So they already had the rights to use that. So what Lloyd just said, they kind of enjoined that and just said that for temporary reasons, keep using this whole easement here.
Yeah.
So interesting stuff.
Great case.
So let's talk about Santa Claus. It's Christmas time. Can we have an implied easement for Santa coming onto your property? Does he have an easement by necessity? Probably not. There are a lot more ways to enter a home than just need to go through the chimney. Easement by prescription. Has he been using it for so long? No, because the rights to come onto your property have been given by permission. Remember, the easement by prescription is where you take someone else's land without their consent. So with the two examples we talked about today, probably not an implied easement for Santa. It's more like a permissive use type of situation. With permissive use, you can always cancel it at any time. So if you tell somebody, hey, you can come onto my land to use it, you can always terminate that. That's it. Thanks, guys.
So, we've got a free Ninja webinar coming up. That's the 10-step buyer process. By the way, I'm going to move through these kind of quickly because I know we're running over schedule. So that's going to be at Hillsborough Village, Wednesday, 12/19. All these are at 10 a.m. 12/19 on Wednesday. East is going to be Thursday. Franklin is going to be Friday. So that is the next 3 days. You can pick that up. All you have to do is a tour of Village all over town. You can see it 3 different times. So make sure you stop into one of those meetings to see that Ninja webinar. Happy holidays. Of course, our offices are going to be closed on 4 days. So that's Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day. So you guys will always still have access whenever the office is closed. So it's going to be just like a Saturday or Sunday, but without office support. So you can come in here, you can do work, you can print, you can do whatever you want to. There's just not going to be staff support on those 4 days. And that's it, except for that one other thing. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. We do have a couple more listings to talk about. Yeah.
We have closing on Friday afternoon.
Mhm.
Of course. Yeah. Christmas.
Yeah, I hope so.
What should they do with their paperwork as far as the title company? Because Monday and Tuesday will be closed. Maybe to wait.
No, they can get the paperwork here as soon as possible, but it just won't be processed until the next business day for the office. Yeah. So we have a couple more. Who's up next? David, Melissa?
Yes.
David, where are you? Over here? Have I met Melissa yet?
I don't think so.
Hi, Melissa. Oh, boy.
We have 223 Plantation Court listed going to be listed on January 3rd. It is vacant. We can probably get you in earlier, even towards the end of this week. List price will be $238. The Emerald Railroad Plantation, 3 bedrooms, 2 full, 1 half bath. It is all new flooring downstairs, no carpet anywhere in the unit. French doors open to the back patio and covered parking. All appliances conveyed close to the community pool. Really nice place. And we love an in-house contract. So let me know.
And Scott.
I announced this before a couple weeks ago, but now we have a date. It's going to come out on January 1st. The address is actually wrong, so I apologize. It's 805 Riverside, not 850. But agent preview this Thursday, 1 to 4. If you guys want to come out, it'd be great. I'd love to have you out there. See what this place is like. It's an incredible 2-level house overlooking the lake with sailboats and sunrises and all that stuff. There's 2 marinas with full-service restaurants within a short boat ride away. 1.15 million. Awesome place. The view is incredible, so just to come out there and see that during the day, y'all going out, it's gonna be great. 1.15 January 1st.
Love it. Sell that. That's gonna be a Merry Christmas for you and Scott if you get that one sold. Oh, okay, I'm gonna come down the aisle.
Sorry, 805 Riverside, sorry about that, that's the wrong one.
Oh, 805.
Not
Okay.
805.
I'll refresh. Okay, I have one for you. In Luna Heights, that's like super close to here, and it is an estate sale. So it's 1,000 square foot house, 2 bedroom, 4 bath. It's really simple. It's priced really low. It'd be totally fine for an owner, occupant, or an investor. And the pictures were taken while we were here, so it'll be ready soon. But you can go see it anytime. And then I have one coming on Scott. They would only work for an investor or cash buyer because there are tenants in through September. But it's in Inglewood and it's like right under McGavick. And like above Layton, so you could walk to Riverside Village or Gallatin or whatever from it. And it's 3 beds, 2 baths. It was built in 2005, so everything in it is modern and it's an open floor plan and the bedrooms are good size, all that. And it's going to be under 350, but we'll know for sure tomorrow.
Awesome. Scott's a hot property now. You get them all? Maggie. Where are you, Maggie?
I'm right here.
Oh yeah, front row. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm just losing you. I was never good at classic concentration.
Hey y'all, I have 828 Rustleo Drive in Westmead. This is literally within sniffing distance of Chick-fil-A, so it's really close. It's up the hill. That's good or bad, but it's right up on this beautiful hill, right on Rustleo. It's a ranch. It's 3/4 acre tree lot. 3 beds, 2 baths, both full baths, 1,700 square feet. It's fully updated, great yard, big patio in the back, very private. All the appliances remain. Everything's been, like I said, updated. The roof's like 3 years old. Open kitchen, 5 minutes to the interstate, right by Nashville West and
Costco.
in Costco, right?
Yeah.
Free samples every day. We just go eat free
That's a free
samples for your
lunch.
meals. So it's going to be listed the first week of January. 385-ish.
Ish. It's another
Not
ish.
yet ish.
I know.
because,
It's the season of ish. That's for sure.
Things change.
All right, so that's it for the new listings. This is the end of the. Oh, Lee, go ahead.
There's an open house tour in Germantown today for Danielle Elling, Mark Mariani, and David Binkley. 7th and Taylor, Elliott, 4th and Garfield, 7th and Garfield from 11 to 1.
11 to 1. Is there free lunch? Maybe. I don't know. Oh, is that true? Are they doing that? Oh, that's awesome. Soup and sandwiches. Wow. It's great weather for that. Okay, guys, that's the end of the meeting, but I've got one more thing that I want to do afterwards. So if anybody needs to go, you can go ahead and go now. But I promised you guys that I would give you a short presentation on box brownie. It's my favorite thing that I found in 2018. How many people have ever used box brownie before? Nobody in the room. Holy cow.
I've heard of it though. Is it the sweet thing?
It is really cool. And I think I'm going to ask that same question in about a month. Because I think that you guys are going to love what you see. So Box Brownie is an Australian company. So when you're working with them, you're going all the way to Australia. Your files are. Then they're coming all the way back. Now I've got a little cheat sheet here. But what they do is they take pictures and make them better. Okay? So you can even take pictures yourself, and they can make them look so good, it will look like a professional photographer took it. So if you just need one of those advanced pictures, or you need to take a picture of a moment in a house that's just perfect, take it on your own phone, and I'll show you what you can do with it. So one of the things that they do is virtual staging. Now this doesn't have pricing, but as we go through, I've got the pricing guide here, and I'm going to tell you what these things cost. So I'm going to wait till the end of the segment, though, to tell you what it is, though. So virtual staging. This is what you start with. Not bad, right? We could sell that. That looks hip, urban. But that's what they do with it when you send the picture to them. I think that looks great. I think that looks great. Does anybody see a problem, a legal problem that could arise by doing this?
If they affix something to a wall or a light thing, then it has to remain. Yeah.
That's right, fixtures. So if there's anything that could naturally convey by the terms in the contract, and you have artificially created that in your picture, you definitely want to put a little disclaimer in there about that. Or maybe it's even a better idea to say that some of the pictures have been enhanced. You know, I think that would work. Because they're going to discover it when they get there, right? Because that doesn't actually put this furniture in the house. So here's another one. That's what you start with. That's the way they stage it virtually. Oh, and the virtual staging is $32 per picture. Not bad, right? $32 a picture, and then they will put all that furniture in there for you. That's cheaper than what Sam Graham charges, I promise you. I know. Yeah. He deserves it, because he's hustling real furniture. Yeah. So, Day to Dusk. This is a fun one. I really like this one. It's very cost effective. So this is what you start with. It's a great picture. Of course, this is right on Percy Priest Lake. You can see right there. Yeah. Surfers in the background. And that's what they make it look like.
Wow. That's worth $32 for sure.
Is it worth 32?
Heck yeah.
Yeah? What about this one? And it's at night. Yeah. Now, I'll worry about this one a little bit because you see what they've done here?
Yeah.
They've created light spots which could make a buyer think, I have lights in my pool right there. And if those lights don't exist, you definitely need a disclaimer for that. So as you're enhancing these pictures, I want you to think about, is there anything that I've implied would convey that isn't there, that's not going to convey? Or just develop magic language that you're going to put in every listing that has enhanced photos.
I assume you could have some control, like you could say, please don't enhance the pool, don't.
Oh, sure. Yeah. You can send instructions that way. Yeah. But left to their own devices, they're just going to make it look awesome. And that's what they've done here. There's daytime, actual photo, then they've made it dusk. They've even added in the flame and the fire pit there for you. And so that is, Day to Dusk is, you said it was worth 32?
That's a good.
No, it's got to go lower. Gotta go. I'm going to make it like a talk show here.
No, it's too expensive, boy.
That's right. It's $4.
What?
I know. You think I'm lying to you.
What?
And it's not for Australian, it's $4 American. $4 American.
You have like children doing this in a sweatshop?
They do. It's a sweatshop. Yeah. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Are you going to do it in here? Okay, all right. Give me like 4 more minutes and I'll just blast through this, okay? Bobby does have a class coming up, so I'm going to run you through the rest of these. No more talk show. Item removal and virtual staging. Before, Nightmare, Smurf collection from hell, right? That's what it looks like after. Much better. Make today great.
They can remove the big, go big orange, they can remove the big
They sure can.
Tennessee logos.
Oh yeah, the border.
They're all over.
Yeah. So before, which I think that's pretty awesome. Jeff Coons over here, who's going to remove that? But they did.
What's this one called?
What's the name of the website? Oh, item removal. Item removal. There's the before. Everybody has that bedroom where you're trying to sell it. They didn't get around to putting a headboard in. The bed's on the floor. And look at that. Super cute.
So can you take the photos that you get from Distinctive Home Tours or Showcase and send those photos to them? If
You can
the
send any
photos,
photo.
okay, any photo.
Any photo. Yeah, that you have a license to. So make sure you talk to your photographer and you have a license, and then they can edit it. So image enhancement, I'm going to provide these prices to you afterwards, but they get even more cost effective. Image enhancement right here is $1.60 per photo. So there's the before, after, before, after, before, after, $1.60. Before, there's a pool there, you can't see it until they get done with it. Look at that. Virtual renovations. This is really fun. Oh no, Grandma never did anything to that house. Look at that, but now she did. Look at that. That's just to show them what it could look like. Now that's a lot of peril right there, because if you show that in a listing photo, you're really implying that the stuff that conveys isn't there. So I might use this to show my client what a renovation could look like, but I wouldn't necessarily use this for MLS. Okay? There's the before, but they really want a pool. They wanted a house with a pool, but you've done the math for them and showed them what it could look like with a pool. There's the before. That looks rough. That looks like a new build. And there's the after somebody got done sexying it up. Aerial editing. This is fun. There's your lot, but they've enhanced it. So if you have one of those things where the lot is a real draw and you can get a drone shot like this, that is a great way to enhance it and show it. Here's another one. Yep, again, this is a little different though. This is Old Hickory Lake in the background. Yeah. Look at that lot. I think that's pretty. But you want to show exactly the boundaries of what you're conveying, so they mark that off right there, just by blacking out the rest of it. Color change. This is more for you showing your clients, they want white cabinets. All right, well, I'll send it off to Australia, and I'll show you what white cabinets look like in this house. They hate that wallpaper in the niche and on the right wall. They got rid of it. And then cabinet color change again, right there. And then you can do custom stuff. This is what you start with. They don't want to buy anything that crappy. It just looks like bad bones. But no, it can look like that when you're done with it. And I'm going to blow through the rest of these because I want to show you. They can also edit 360 photos. So if you start with that, they can do that. And 360 virtual staging. Start with that, they can stage it for you. Now floor plans are really cool. So if you give them that, they can provide you with this.
For how much?
Floor plans are $24 for 2D black and white, 2D full color is 28, 2D textured is 28, and if you want to go 3D full color, that we'll see in just a minute, right there, that is $32. $32 for that guy right there. But you have to give them something to start with right there. And of course, measurements are going to be really helpful for them to put that together with any level of accuracy. You start with this. Say your clients come up with this. They have, a blueprint for their floor plan. Then you can have that put together for your listing. So if you're representing builders, this seems really valuable. So that's anywhere from $24 to $32. And site plans. So if you're representing a developer, site plans are going to be really helpful too. And so those are around $40. They can also do computer enhanced renders. All that stuff is just nothing but computer images. So if you want to help your builder describe what the house is going to look like inside once it's done, you can send them finished selections and they can come up with renderings of what it's going to look like. Oh, and commercial examples too. That's it, guys. I'm going to leave this, you know what I'll do? I'm going to leave this price sheet back here, which is also available online, back here by the Sally printer, so that you guys can just go shoot a copy of it if you want to. Okay, so if you're a paper person, make a copy back here. If you're electronic, just go to Box Brownie, and they will they'll get you plugged in. It is, Box Brownie. Or just text me and I'll tell you what it is. That's it, thanks guys. Stick around if you need to take the test.